All right, what am I working on? The RGM 79G GM, first production mobile suit. It's a master grade 1/100 scale kit. Why am I working on it? Because I occasionally do pre-assembly where I partially or fully build a model, put it back in the box, and put it on the shelf. I do it for two reasons. One, so that I've always got some ready-built models to work on that are, assembled in at whatever stage I think I want them at. And then also sometimes I just like building and assembling a model to not do anything else. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a break, kind of a relief valve. Just something fun where I can kind of turn my mind off and just pay attention to the instructions and just kind of get involved in it. Now, if I'm doing it for that reason, I only do it with something like a Bandai kit. I'd never do that with, say, a special hobby kit or a tow kit or something like that. There's no joy in that. But putting together a Gunpla is always quite fun. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'll make some observations about it every now and then. But it's just literally assembling the parts. Now, whenever I'm building Gundam, I always put the parts on the instruction sheets. So I can keep track of what is what, and that way I can clean up the nubs, because that's one of the reasons, another one of the reasons that I do these ahead of time is nub cleanup. There are so many little nubs on these parts. My own camera. Guess it doesn't matter. This is not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to answer a question that Chris Bernique had asked on one of the videos, the comments on one of the videos, where he had asked about I can't remember if he said, probably should have wrote this down, but I don't remember if he said my favorite brands for Maschinen Krieger or my recommended brands, but I guess it's kind of one and the same, in the sense that the ones that would be my favorites would be the ones that I would recommend the most. So that's what I'm going to talk about, if I don't throw parts all over myself. Now, as always, when you're answering a question about favorites or recommended or anything like that, I mean, there's some things, of course, that I would say, okay, I absolutely recommend this or that, because, there's some things that are just so good that you always say that's okay. You can't go wrong with that. Like, when it comes to, if somebody says, hey, I'm thinking about building a Tamiya kit, what do you think about those? Hey, I can always recommend those. That's not an issue. They're great kits, so I don't ever hesitate with something like that. But most of the time, there is some caveat about, okay, what do you think of this kit or that kit? There's very rarely anything that doesn't require nuance. And I think when it comes to Maschinen Krieger, there's definitely some nuance involved in the answer. This is one of the older Gundam kits where you actually have to put a screw in. Now, it fits perfectly, and it's easy to do, but some of the old ones require a screw to be fitted in, so I went off camera to do that because I had to pull it right into my face to see what I was doing. And I've got this tiny little screwdriver. Years ago, my daughter, just as like a stocking stuffer, gave me this little set of screwdrivers, and I thought, what am I going to do with those? You don't know how many times I've used this little one right here, the Phillips head, for screwing stuff in. But anyway, I was saying that when it comes to machining Krieger, there's generally I have to give a more nuanced answer. And you know me, anybody else would just say, oh yeah, get this kit, it's great. Not anybody else, but a lot of people would say, oh yeah, just get this kit or that kit, it's great. I was told that about the Fleeter mouse. Oh yeah, it's great. And I'm like, did you actually, I've asked people sometimes, did you actually build the kit? Oh, no, I never built that kit. Why would I build that kit? So, I always have started asking the follow-up question, to find out, did somebody build it? Because a lot of times they haven't, and they will give it a hearty recommendation, and they have no idea what they're talking about. I had to look at that a little closer. Sorry, I went silent there for a minute. And I still don't think I've got it right. But anyway, I think to make a good recommendation, you have to go into a little detail and you have to ask somebody about, I think you got to consider your skill level, your tolerance level for pain, depending on the kit and what you like doing. So that's how I'm going to kind of break up my probably very long and boring answer, is to say, first, you have to examine what it is you like doing. Because, in the machining Krieger world, there's vehicles, and then there's the armored fighting suits of the various kinds. And so I think you've got to identify, recommended stuff, favorite stuff, whatever, based on that. So let me start with the armored fighting suits, just to actually get to the point of the whole thing, somewhere along the way. With armored fighting suits, and these are the ones that are generally 1/25th scale. There's also 1/35th scale. I'll talk about those too. There's 1/20th scale. You generally in 1/20th scale are going to have two manufacturers. There's going to be the old Nato kits that were produced back in the 80s. I don't think they produced them beyond the 80s. I may be wrong. I'm not entirely up on my machining Krieger production history, but I think they were only produced maybe into the 90s, but certainly, they're no longer produced. And when they were produced, I don't know if the idea was that they were trying to recreate the garage nature of the assembly, the homemade nature of the assembly, and so they came with a lot of multimedia, or if it was done, a lot of times multimedia is used to save money so that you don't have to cast so many parts. So I don't know which it was, doesn't really matter, but they had a lot of multimedia. I've built a few, and the fit just wasn't what you'd expect on a modern kit. Understand, as modelers, we're spoiled with the modern kits we build. When you're building certainly these Bandai kits, the Tamiya kits, Edward, just about any, even manufacturers that get a lot of heat, like Trumpeter or Hobby Boss or something, because they're very rarely accurate. They're actually very good kits to build. So we're spoiled. I know I am. And because, sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to skip back into modeling and I'm going to go build all those kits that I built as a kid. And they get about one or two kits into it. And sometimes they remember, wow, how did I do this as a kid? Because some of these kits are pretty bad. Now, a lot of people really get into it, and they like correcting them and all that. But anyway, Nato made some kits. Get back on point, John. Nato made some fighting suit kits, and then they went out of business. And then when interest in machining Krieger started coming back around, and they got some legal things resolved between the inventor, Ko Yokoyama, and the magazine that he had worked for, Waves started coming out with them. So if you're And then Hasegawa has made some 1/35th scale armored fighting suit kits, as has a more newcomer to Maschinen Krieger, Kyoto. They've made some various kits available in 1/35th scale. If all of them are buildable, don't hear that even the Nato stuff is unbuildable. They're buildable. The Nato stuff for the assembly is going to be frustrating generally. I've built a few of them, and they're frustrating. Keep in mind, I've built a fair amount of Maschinen Krieger. I'm not by any stretch going to claim that I built every Maschinen Krieger kit. But I've built a number of them, enough that I think I can say, I've got some experience in it, and have built enough of the various brands that I can say, I think this one is a good one, or that one's a good one, or whatever. So when it comes to the fighting suit kits, definitely the Wave kits, I think, are by far the best. In 1/35th scale, I have not built any of the Kyoto armored fighting suits. I have built a couple of other Kyoto kits, vehicles, which I'll talk about vehicles in a minute. Those seem very good. Hasegawa, I've built one of their armored fighting suits kits in 1/35th scale. It was pretty good. Now, the caveat with any Maschinen Krieger kit I've built is you're going to run into seams. There's just no two ways about it. That seems to be something that they just have a lot of. When you're building these, this is an older Gunpla, so I want to run into seams, but like when you're building newer Gunpla, there's things on them that you just, whoops, okay, pay attention, John. You just don't run into a lot of seams, like I said, on the newer things. They go together really, really well, and they're just great kits. Now, when you're building most Maschinen Krieger kits, they're a little more what would you say? They're a little more challenging in terms of those seams. All of them. I've not built one yet that didn't have some fairly challenging seam work involved. Hang on, let me go off camera and figure out what I'm doing here. Let's see. This is one of those instances that I talk about with Gundam. This wasn't fitting, I thought, but then I thought back to my caveat that if a Gundam kit isn't fitting, it's not the kit, it's you. I pulled back, twisted a few things around, pushed a little harder, bam, everything's in place, fits perfectly. So, yeah, that rule proved. But I've built more than a few of them, and the seam work on every single kit I've built, whether it's from any manufacturer. Now, there's some that's less difficult than others in that, for example, the Wave stuff usually fits fairly well, and I can get those seams cleaned up pretty easily. The Nato kit, man, it's a slog. The Hasegawa stuff, they seem to specialize in having kits that fit really well, but they put seams where they're really difficult to get to. I've noticed that on aircraft, and they just continue it into the machining Krieger world. So, hey, at least they're consistent. Just so you're wondering, I'm not gluing any of this so that later on, after I get it assembled, my plan is I tend to build Gundam inside out or outside in that I've found my favorite method is, instead of putting up every single part on a stick, I build the thing, I prime it so that I'm priming the armor, I do the base painting on the armor, then I take all of that apart, and then I paint the frame. And what I do when I have the whole thing assembled, anywhere that there's a seam line that I can close it up and still get the piece off, I close it up. If I can't close it up, I turn it into a panel line, like right here. This will need to be, I can't glue that together where this joint is right here because of needing to slide this on the way it needs to go. So what I'll do is I'll get my scribing tool and I'll scribe that in a little deeper so that when I do finally, eventually, one day, put it all back together, and and it's after everything's been painted and I put it back together, I can glue it, and that'll be a panel line, and I won't have to worry about damaging the paint or anything like that. So that's kind of my madness method. But back to the seam lines. You have to, for suits and vehicles, you have to come to grips with the fact that you're going to have to deal with seam lines. Now, on a lot of the fighting suits, because it's appropriate within the genre to texture the surface, a lot of times the texturing covers that stuff up. See, Chris, this is why I didn't email you this answer. You know how long this would have taken to type out. But there's going to be a lot of seam work. There's also the hoses. Any of the kits come with the hoses that are made of this soft rubber that in the 1/20th scale that can be difficult to deal with. Cleaning them up is a pain in the butt. I mean, there's just no other way around it. Now, my solution is I quit cleaning them up. I just don't care. So that's one solution. Oh, and another one of the fighting suits that I have to mention is the Hasegawa Ammo Knight series. The Ammo Knights are actually, they're technically not machining Krieger. They're from a thing he had done, that Ko Yokoyama had done when he got into the legal battle with, I think the name was Hobby Japan of the magazine, and he came up with this thing called Robot Battle 5 or something like that he started doing these additional kits. And the Ammo Knight, while we now call it just part of machining Krieger, it's technically not. It is, but it isn't. It's like, well, I'm doing this, but I'm no longer calling it machining Krieger for legal reasons. It's what was the thing in the Austin Powers movie? It looks like Godzilla, but it's not. So there's that one too, which honestly, that one is a great kit. It's still got all the seam lines on it. I mean, it's still got the stuff that comes with any Hasegawa kit, but it's a great kit to build, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for something to build. So anyway, to get to a conclusion with the armored fighting suit kind of things, first of all, I definitely would recommend the Ammo Knight. That tends to be the one. It's a little more complicated in its build. It's got a few more parts, but it's not difficult by any stretch. It's just, there's just a fair number of parts. I don't even want, it's not like a Gunpla, but there's a fair number of parts. But the Ammo Knight, I definitely recommend because it's just such a fun kit to build. It has a fairly complete interior, and there's a lot of painting and weathering opportunities in that. At the same time, the exterior just has so many little shapes and things, and you can do so many weathering techniques at it. And the genre just invites to just, you can make it as clean as you want, or you can just weather the poo out of it and have a lot of fun with it. And despite what everybody says with the genre, and this is just an editorial sidebar, despite what everybody says with the genre, oh, just do it like you want, and everybody loves it. Not really. You're going to do it some way, and somebody's going to tell you something in the lore that, it wasn't that way, and you're like, this is make-believe. It was exactly the way I want it to be because it's make-believe, so shut up. So there's that aspect of it. But, the Ammo Night. Now, when I recommend the Ammo Night as, okay, if you're going to build one, build that one. If you look at any of the Wave armored fighting suit kits, and you go, but those really appeal to me, they're only slightly down the list of recommendation, and I mean very slightly, simply because some of their boy, this is not screwing in really well. Some of the hoses that they have, people who have built those tend to tell me that the hoses greatly frustrate them because they try to clean them up. And when I tell them, well, don't clean them up, they're like, oh, well, I never thought about that. And I'm like, yeah, that's the secret to it. Don't clean them up. And some people are happy with that. Some people will say, I can't do that, And I'm like, well, okay, then you get to struggle with the hoses. But any of the Wave kits, especially some of the like there's some from the Strahl faction. There's two factions basically in Maschinen Krieger. There's Strahl and then the mercenaries. Think of them as, and it's a little more nuanced than this, but think of the Strahl as, and no, everybody says it's not space Nazis, it's not space Nazis, it's not space Nazis. I know they're more modeled after, they say, oh, they're modeled after East Germans. It's basically World War II. Okay, it's not an alternate World War II, but it is. Okay, I'm just going to say it, and if you say no, it's not, I'm going to go, yeah, it really is. It's like when somebody was, I remember one time hearing a discussion, and people were like, so they were talking about pornography, and it was in the setting of our church, and somebody said, somebody was making the statement that they did not watch pornography, and then somebody else said, well, didn't you say you watched 50 Shades of Grey? And the person was like, well, yeah. And they said, well, wasn't that pornography? And the guy said, oh no, that was art. So, and I'm you make your own judgment on that. I'm just using it as an example. It's basically World War II, and there's Nazis, and there's Allied guys. So, I tend to prefer the most of the mercenary forces, simply because the aesthetic appeals to me just a little more for very minor reasons. But certainly just the basic SAFS is a very, very good place to start for the Wave models, because they're just very, very good kits. You know what? I may have to wait on screwing that in, because this screw and this screwdriver, the screwdriver's just a little too large for that. And we have one that's a little smaller, but it's in our bedroom, and my wife is asleep right now, and I do not want to wake her up. for this nonsense, so I'll just wait. But anyway, of the fighting suit kits, Ammonite top recommendation, but only followed slightly by anything from Wave. Now, of the 1/35th scale kits, I've built one of the Hasegawa kits, and it was good. It just, like any Hasegawa kits, I thought some of the seam lines were just very ill placed, and I also just didn't enjoy the scale as much for the fighting suits. For 1/35th, they were really small. It seems like it wasn't much taller than this Vallejo bottle, and in the setting of a diorama, it would have been perfect for, say, a vehicle that was Maschinen Krieger vehicle that was 1/35th scale. But I just found just assembling that suit itself to be a little small. I have not built the Kyoto kits, the fighting suit kits. The kits that I have built, the quality has been good, with the similar caveats about the seam lines. And they're probably, I can't imagine that the armored fighting suit kits for Kyoto would be any different than the vehicles in terms of quality. So those would probably be something to look into. Now, in terms of vehicles, Wave makes a couple of them, makes a few of them. Like, for instance, the Wave Gladiator. I think that is a re-engineered kit. I think those parts are from Wave. They're not repopped Nato kits. And I've built the Gladiator, and it's a fantastic build. Same caveat with seams, but it was a fantastic build. And I really, really enjoyed that kit. It's hard to get, and it is expensive. I think new it was like $125. So it's no joke when it comes to the price. But it was a super, super nice kit in terms of just the overall build from it. But at the same time, Wave did re-release some of the Nato kits. Like, I built the Cooster, which is kind of like the Crota that you've seen me working on recently, the 35th scale thing. It's the tank turret with the stompy legs. That was a Nato kit. Now, that one wasn't too bad. Aside from some of the multimedia nonsense, little wires that they wanted you to put in everywhere, it was not too bad. There was plenty of seam lines to clean up, but for the most part, the parts went together well, and it worked. It worked okay. But then again, I built the Nato Jerry, and while I got it together, it was somewhere between the Cooster and the Fledermaus. The Cooster was really just, okay, yeah, there's some seam lines and places that I got to clean up, but I can make it work. The Jerry was a little more difficult, not as difficult as the Fledermaus that you've seen me working on for a while now, but the Jerry was more difficult. But I really liked the design of the Jerry, so I kind of slogged through with it and just left off some of the wires and things like that. So with the vehicles, you've got to really make the decision based on what design do you like, and read up on it, see what your tolerance is for whatever pain level that particular kit is going to have with it. Now, others that I've built, the Kyoto, I've built the Kyoto. I'm working on the Crota, which I'm done with the assembly on that, and I really, let me see, do I have it over here somewhere? I really enjoyed it. Yeah, there were some seams that I had to clean up. There were, you can see here's the lower waist and stuff like that. There was some cleanup work that I had to do, and a few places took a little grunting to get the parts in place, but overall, I enjoyed it. The I have not built the Max Factory one. I think this is Max Factory's first entry into Machining Krieger. The kit number for that fall kit, the Max Factor fall kit, it's the flyer that looks like a crab. That's a 1/35th scale. I think this is their first because the kit number is 001. The Hasegawa kits, I've enjoyed those. I've built the Falca, and I have not built the Camel. I've not built the Luna Diver. I have not built the Nutcracker. I have built, the version I've built was called the Vega. It's the big stompy robot looking, it is a robot. It's actually a robot. That I think they call them the Datsun, D-A-S-C-H-U-N-D, however you say it. There's a whole bunch of different names. It's one of the things you have to understand about. Another thing you have to understand about Machining Krieger. How much can this guy talk about nonsense? You know me. Anyway, they take the same kit and they add 3 bumps on it, 2 more antennas, and they call it something different. And then a year later, they release it, and it's got 1 more rocket launcher per side, and one of the antennas is shifted from the right to the left, and they call it something else. And then the next time, it'll have some rocket engines, and it's something else. So it's recycling the same kits over, which is fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. That's what they do. It is what it is. That one was fun. That one is going to be more tedious. It has a lot of wiring, a lot of more complicated parts in the build. There's a little more complication in the build sequence if you're trying to do it in sub-assemblies. I figured it out in sub-assemblies. I got all the wiring in. It took a lot of planning to do that. Now, I had a friend who started building one, and he got frustrated with the wiring, and I gave him the same recommendation. Look, if it's just going to sit on your shelf and you don't care, leave the wiring out. He's like, oh, I never thought of that. He left the wiring out. Not a problem. So when it comes to the vehicular type sites, models, I spend all week building websites, so I think of everything in sites. The wave kits are generally good. The newer wave kits, the Gladiator, beware that the older ones are probably Nato kits. The Hasegawa kits are good, but they vary. I have been told, I have not built the Luna Diver. I've been told that the Luna Diver has some really, really frustrating seam lines that you have to fill in, that the engineering of the parts is not as good. So, you've got to take that into account when you're working on that. That some of that is just gonna come into play. There's the hands. I'm sorry, manipulators. Oh wait, that's the wrong sprue. Oh well, I'll figure that out later. But that's something that you're gonna have to take into account. And I will, at the end of the video, I will get to some conclusions, some final conclusions. Now, another factor that I think you have to factor in, being a little redundant there, but another thing you have to factor in is that when you're looking at reviews, and I say this having looked at a fair number of reviews and talked to a fair number of people, and I will stand by this statement, is a lot of times when people who are big Machining Krieger fans are telling about their build of a Machining Krieger kit, they paint it in a far rosier light, I think, than is helpful. Like I read, somebody pointed me to a review of the Fleeter mouse after I'd started on it. They saw the Nikki, I think that was you. After they saw the difficulty in getting all those seams closed up and all the little bits and pieces dealt with, they sent me that this review that some guy had done for his kit. And I went and I read the review, and I'm like, wow, he was like, talking about there was just really no problems. It was easy to do, great kit, loved it, so glad they have this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at it, I'm reading it, I'm going, his build experience just, I started going, man, I must, maybe I'm losing any of my building skills or something, in my old age or whatever. And then I went and looked at the model up close. I kind of zoomed in on the model itself. It looked good. Now, I'm not going to say it didn't look good. It looked pretty good. The result was good. But then when I zoomed in, all of the problems that I ran into in building that kit, the guy ignored. He didn't close any of the seam lines. That transition part between the fuselage and between the main body of the thing and the cockpit area, he just left the line there. Everything on it was like, okay, I'm just going to ignore it. Which now, again, that is a valid approach to it. If a part of the assembly is not fun, ignore it. If you're putting it on your shelf and you're happy with it, so it kind of made me I thought, well, it validates it because all of the areas that I spent the time trying to resolve, and then some of them I just gave up on, and I think they look worse now than when I started, but he just chose to ignore them. And I'm like, okay, that's a valid approach. You really do run into, I would call them machining Krieger apologists, in the fact that they love the genre. And I'm not saying this as a criticism. I'm just saying this as a reality. They love the genre. They love the history of it. Many of them were building those kits back in the 80s, and it was this mysterious thing that you could get imported from Japan if you were lucky and you'd build them. And people loved them, and they developed a really small but fanatical following. And now they still love those kits, and they look at them with a lot of nostalgia, and they will talk about them in very, very glowy terms. And I understand that, because there's some old kits that other people are like, man, that kit ain't real good. And I'm like, yeah, but boy, I enjoyed building it as a kid. And so there's that nostalgia factor. So a lot of times when you're reading reviews of machining Krieger kits, machining Krieger, I don't know why I keep going machining Krieger kits, you won't necessarily get an objective view of what the build is like. So, and this is where I transition into starting to get to a conclusion. Yay! That you have to evaluate essentially your pain tolerance. That's what you're getting to. That's what you're looking at and going. And I know that there's, if you get on the right Facebook group where everybody's this master modeler and they're very serious about it, and you just need to apply modeling skills. Whatever. It's a hobby, I got modeling skills. I try to, I don't, it's like with my day job. I've built websites. I quit counting in 2016 or 17 how many websites I'd built, because I exceeded 2,000 websites that I had built. I've been doing it in total since 1996. I've been doing it professionally since 1998. I have 26 years of professional experience building websites. Well over 2,000 websites, well over 1,500 WordPress websites, for everything from very small one-person businesses to entire school systems. What was once a major newspaper here in North Carolina, and won awards for it. Not me, but the newspaper did. And, done our local utilities company for a very large metro area. I've built small and big websites, and I'm not saying this to brag, but what I'm saying is, when somebody sits down and I tell them, well, here's what I recommend for what you've done, and they go, well, but I'm thinking this or that. I give them, I throw it out one time. Look, you're the 100th lawyer website I've built. I've seen what works and what doesn't. And I've gotten old, and now sometimes I say it politely, but I tell people, look, here's what I recommend, but I can do smart stuff or I can do stupid stuff. The pay is the same. So one of the reasons I think that my clients tell me they like working with me is I'm just very objective about it. I don't blow smoke. You know, if they ask me, do you think this is a good idea? And I say no, they know I have a reason why. So when it comes to building models, I don't buy that whole, you just got to use your modeling skills thing. I have modeling skills. Look, I don't know everything, but I have modeling skills for days. There's very few problems that people tell me about that I haven't encountered multiple times and figured out multiple ways to save them or to fix them. And I say that, again, not to brag. That is not my purpose at all, because I know me. I know my shortcomings. I think I do. At least some of them. I guess one of my shortcomings is I don't know all my shortcomings. But you've got to evaluate how much stock you put into that modeling skills thing. You may have all the modeling skills in the world and go, I'm at a point now I don't want to use those modeling skills. I'm tired of fighting kids. It's why I've said I will no longer build special hobby. I'll no longer build Nateau. There's just certain brands that I'm like, why would I even bother? If all I built the rest of my life was Tamiya and Bandai and maybe some special hobby stuff, not special hobby, Hobby Boss. Ooh, Hobby Boss or Trumpeter. Yeah, they're inaccurate, but they're great builds. Then that's fine. I've decided I've had enough of fighting kits. If I do ever decide to build one of those kits, it's because I really want to build the thing, and I probably want to do a video to focus on problem solving. And if I'm still doing Patreon or something like that, where I'm a little more open about what I say, I'm probably going to whine and complain the entire time that I do it. So you've got to evaluate, what do you like, and I mean there's a part where there's ease of build and but I really like it, and you've got to determine how much, if you want the I really like it and the ease of build to completely overlap, that's going to limit the number of kits that you're going to build. You can still have fun. If you're thinking, well, it's a 50-50 overlap, then that's something you've got to consider too. If you're willing to say, well, I really like it and there's ease of build and there's no, it's just going to be like the Fleeter mouse. Honestly, I think the Fleeter mouse has exceeded my tolerance for enjoying the project. That's why I'm working on it so slowly. But I am going to finish it because I'm at the point now that it's so close to being finished. Why not finish it and sell it and get my money back, if only that. But again, the point is you've got to determine, because I have not run into a machining Krieger kit yet where there's none that I've found that go together like a Bandai kit. None. There's none that go together like a very good Tamiya kit. Some of the older Tamiya kits, you got to deal with seam lines and stuff like that. Some of the newer ones, I mean, there's, along the spine of the fuselage or something, but even those are usually easy to deal with. The newer stuff for machining Krieger is not Bandai, it's not Tamiya, but you've got Hasegawa, you've got Wave, you've got Kyoto, you've got Max Factory. Those, you're going to deal with some seam lines, you're going to deal with some rubber hoses, you may deal with some wires. So there's going to be that period. And then you're going to have to just do some research. And if the research is emailing me and saying, or, messaging me and saying, hey, have you built this? What do you know of this? I'll tell you what I know. So that, I think, is a factor that you have to consider. Because I had a friend who, he saw me having fun on YouTube in my blog early on when I was doing Machining Krieger with Machining Krieger. He got one of the kits, started assembling it, got to trying to clean up those rubber hoses, because he really wanted to clean the seam lines, the mold part lines on it, and found out you can only really partially clean those. You either have to find some other alternative to replace them, or you're just never going to get them fully cleaned. And he goes, this ain't worth it. He stuffed it back in the box, sent it to me, said, here's a free kit. Do what you want with it. I ended up building it and putting it in a video. I don't remember which one it was, but it was one of the variants of the AFS. And so, sometimes people's tolerance for it is 0, and I think that's okay. But you've got to determine that. Now, as far as the point of the whole thing, the recommendations, and I've already kind of made them. When it comes to the armored fighting suits, certainly the Ammonite. That's a little more expensive, but it's easier to get. That's the other aspect, and I won't dive into too deep. But the Hasegawa stuff is easy to get here in the U.S. If you're going to get the Wave stuff, the goods or the Max Factory stuff, the Kyoto stuff, you're pretty much going to have to order from Japan. I would say order from Japan, because ordering from Japan plus the shipping is usually cheaper than if a source here in the U.S. gets it, and you have to pay what they want plus the shipping. Usually it's a little cheaper to just get it straight from Hobby Link Japan or something like that. But anyway, the Ammonite from Hasegawa, if you're wanting to build an armored fighting suit, that one is top of my list, because it's just I had such a fun time with it, within the caveats that I've talked about. But like I said, only slightly behind that is the Wave kits. None of them were difficult. You're dealing with the seam lines and those rubber hoses that I've talked about. But the designs of them are really cool. There's a fairly wide variety of them. Even though the base kits are all the same, there's lots of different, rockets and lumps and bumps and things. And then there's also kits where they're authorized, where they have the base of the plastic, and then some other manufacturer will add resin parts and things like that. So, you can find some of those. But certainly, like I said, for the armored fighting suits, just to reiterate, which means repeat, the Ammonite, and then any of the suits that appeal to you from Wave. If you're not sure, if you've never built one and you're not sure and you just want to test the waters, do not get a Nitto kit. Please do not get a Nitto kit. You may build one later and go, I don't see what the big deal is. You just use modeling skills. And if that's the case, that's fine. But I have known too many people that would get the Nitto kits and get completely turned off from the genre because they thought this is what they're like. They're not. The Wave kits, the Hasegawa Ammonite is great, with those caveats. So that's my recommendation for the fighting suits. Now for the vehicles, it really just comes down to even more of that. What looks cool to you, what appeals to you, what's your tolerance. The two Kyoto kits that I've built, the Storm Beetle, I can't remember the German name for it, but the Storm Beetle and this Crota, they've been very good. A few seam lines to deal with, but they weren't too difficult, and it ended up being easy enough to do. The overall fit was really good. They were really fun, great to weather. They're good at 1/35th scale. So far I've liked those. The Hasegawa kits, like I said, I built the Falca and in 1/20th scale. It's a lot of fun. It's an old kit. The parts aren't, there's a few wonky places where you've got to fill some sand lines. There's some places that honestly I just sanded off detail because it was easier, and then just either restored it or ignored it later on to fill in the seam lines. But you will have to fill seam lines all the way around that thing because it's two halves, big halves that you put together. That one I enjoyed. I have not built the Camel. I've not built the Luna Diver. I've not built the Nutcracker. The Nutcracker, when I looked at it, it looked like it wouldn't be too bad because it's just a big shell. I've heard the Luna Diver is a monster for the seam lines. The reason I haven't built it is it just looks too weird for me. I mean, I just completely don't like the aesthetic of it. I mean, I just look at it, I'm like, it doesn't appeal to me at all. The Nutcracker, I've always wanted to build one of those just simply because it looks like it would be so much fun to weather. I just haven't gotten around to doing it. For the vehicles from Wave, if it's the Gladiator, if you can ever get the Gladiator, that is a wonderful, wonderful kit. So I would recommend that one. The other stuff from Wave, if it's the Cooster or any of its variants, or anything else like that, it's probably a repop of the Nato kit, maybe with a few update parts. It's going to be a little more difficult. And like I said, the Nato kits, I built one that the Cooster didn't seem too bad. The Jerry was kind of in the middle. The Fledermaus, I'm regretting ever starting it. So it can be hit or miss, but definitely for the vehicles, the Gladiator, if you can find it. The Falca is a great one to build. And then those Vega, Altair, Datsun, whatever the big stompy walking thing, they're good kits. You just got to make a decision about the wires. You're going to have to shake hands with it no matter what. There's just no way around that. So, and I'm sorry I don't have a more definitive recommendation. I wish I could say, oh, all the Hasegawa kits are really good, all the Nato kits are really bad. It really does in those cases come down to the balance between I really like it and the ease of assembly. And if you really want the ease of assembly to kind of align with it really looks cool, you're going to have to read some reviews. Like I said, certainly let me know if you have questions, and I'll tell you what I know. It will probably be a really long answer, as you're seeing from this video. But again, this is why I said at the beginning, there's nuance to all of this. So I think I can say with honesty, the only kit that I've built of all the Maschinen Krieger list kits, and I'll run a list down the side of the kits that I built so that you can see, okay, I've got a little experience with them. The only one that I regret embarking on is the Fledermaus. I've built some others that were either Nato or released by Wave, but they were Nato, and I've been okay with them. All the others I've, in the end, enjoyed and was glad that I did it. Now some of them, the conclusion may have been, okay, that was fun, I'm not going to do that one again. But for the most part, but all of them require some level of teeth gritting. It's just how much teeth gritting is there involved in it. So, Chris and everybody else, I hope this has been helpful. I started to apologize because it's been such a long video, but you know my videos. Somebody says, what's your favorite pizza, pepperoni or sausage? Well, sit down and get ready for a discussion on the relative merits of the type of pepperonis and types of sausages that come with pizzas, vis-a-vis the crust and the sauce and all of that stuff. But when it gets back to, I want to try and be helpful. I feel like a helpful answer, a truly helpful answer has to be a little longer. So anyway, I will get back to, you noticed I stopped doing this because I was just having trouble seeing what I was doing and talking about this. So I'll get back to it. But and again, don't message me and say, when are you going to have that GM? I may never do anything with this GM after I get it built. Like I said, sometimes I have several models up in the stash in the closet that are assembled or in sub-assemblies and waiting to go, and I will never build them because some days, this weekend, I've decided I'm just going to do this. I'm not going to paint. I'm not going to airbrush. I'm not going to do anything other than just simple little assembly of a Bandai kit that I really enjoy. Part of the reason is our church is having a craft fair today. Today's Saturday, October 19th, and our church is having a craft fair. My wife is heavily involved in that, and I'm helping out with it. And we're expecting possibly hundreds of people to be coming through the church. We're trying to raise money to to put a new roof on the church. And so there's a lot of crafts that we're going to be selling, and my wife's going to be doing a couple of presentations on making simple Thanksgiving and Christmas table, and if you're having a gathering, having some kind of simple display. So there's been a lot of work going into that. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on that today, and then Monday is her birthday, so we're also going to be having a little family birthday party for her. So anyway, this is perfect because I can just talk and finish the video. So anyway, obviously rambling now. I'm talking about holiday craft fairs, and I say holiday not because I refuse to say Christmas, but because it includes Thanksgiving and Christmas. So just getting that out there. Somebody actually questioned me, well, I noticed you said holiday fair. Are you afraid to say Christmas? No, I say holiday fair because it includes Thanksgiving and Christmas at this point. So anyway, see, this is what happens when an old man starts rambling. You put a camera on him and he starts rambling, and it just goes downhill. So I need to just finish up. So you know the deal. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong, even when you're an old man. So thanks for being a patron. My family and I truly appreciate it, and we are grateful. So I'll close up by saying happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.